And if it does not, we'll give it some help in a moment. So stress incontinence. So this is the kind of incontinence that we're talking about today. So it's the involuntary leakage that occurs when we have too much intra-abdominal pressure pushing on the bladder. So think of last week when we had the balloon and I was squeezing the balloon in different ways. If you imagined another little mini balloon on the inside of that balloon and you squeezed it, that little balloon would get a little bit of pressure. And that's what happens, as you can see in this picture too, the arrows pointing down on the bladder, that the bladder gets this kind of pseudo, hey, we're gonna go, and all of a sudden squeezes a little bit, and then we're peeing, we're leaking. And it can happen in many different times, coughing, laughing, sneezing, lifting up kids, but we don't want it to happen. We should have enough pelvic floor control to be able to keep it all together. So as I said, the primary type of urinary incontinence for women is stress incontinence, which is this coughing, laughing, sneezing. And for men, it's more urge. So if you have husbands, dads, brothers, uncles, whoever who might be dealing with some prostate issues, the prostate issues are more likely to give them urge incontinence, which is that, oh my gosh, I have to pee, and then they pee or leak without wanting it. So last week I started to talk about that it's not just about Kegels, right? So there's research that actually shows that women who are continent, who do not leak, actually have less pelvic floor function. So we're gonna get to that in a minute. They actually work less with their pelvic floor muscles. So to be telling everybody to go around and Kegel and Kegel and Kegel sometimes is really not helping the situation, especially when 40% of women do Kegels inappropriately. So the normal control for our pelvic floor to help hold our bladder or to help hold the urine up inside the bladder is that those superficial muscles that are closest to our underwear to then the deepest muscles contract. So it's superficial closes, deep lifts. So we should have this nice balance. A few things that can actually increase our urinary incontinence. Now, if you think back to college, I don't know how many of us have had too many adult beverages in college. Maybe you all of a sudden feed yourself and you're like, I had no idea. I mean, God forbid that happened, but I feel like there's so many funny stories people about alcohol. But alcohol obviously inhibits our brain and then also slows down the messages. Yeah? Unmute, Marie.
Can we ask whoever to mute, because I'm getting like a lot of static? Yeah, it's not you. I think it's somebody needs to mute their.
I'm just gonna mute both Lauras because I don't know which Laura it is. Oops.
Yeah.
Okay, Laura, take one. Okay, that should be good. That work? Whoop. Better? Okay, thank you. So as I was saying, alcohol can inhibit our brain and our control of the bladder and make us go, especially in those college years sometimes. But there's other things. So foods. I don't know if you've ever been out to dinner, and for me, I love spaghetti and meatballs with a glass of red wine if we go to a really delicious Italian restaurant. I will be up in the middle of the night having to go more often, having more frequency, because those acidic fruits and or acidic tomato products and red wine kind of alter my bladder's ability to feel comfortable holding it. So any of these things on the list can actually increase incontinence. So again, it's not just about how strong your pelvic floor is, but it's also, okay, maybe you do have a little bit of a bladder intolerance that's happening. Maybe there are some spicy foods or some artificial foods or something that's creating this bladder to feel uncomfortable. And then all of a sudden you go to exercise and the bladder is just not as prepared to be able to support itself while you're doing an exercise or whatever it might be. Another big thing is that our poor behaviors, as I said, a lot of moms will get into the habit of, you know, oh, I gotta go in the middle of the night, like 2 or 3 times when I'm up to breastfeed. That just creates this just in case bathroom habit that actually allows your bladder to take over a little bit more and a little bit more. And then all of a sudden we're peeing ourselves at CrossFit or in the middle of class or whatever it might be. And it's like, what the heck? Like this is out of control. So it becomes a mind over bladder thing. All right, so how are we doing with that? Did we understand? Just give me a thumbs up. You don't have to unmute. Did we understand a little bit about like normal bladder habits and stuff? And we're all perfect bladder habits, correct? We all have like the best control of our bladder. I'll be completely honest. I do not, and I know for personal experiences that spaghetti and meatballs and a glass of red wine will make me feel like I have to pee all night long. So, yeah. All right, so we're gonna prevent incontinence. That's what we're probably all here for, is how do we help ourselves? So we need to remember is that whatever we ask of our body, we want to be able to support it. So 3 things you want to consider when you're doing your daily activities, whether it's fitness or running or just walking with the kids or sneezing even. So what are the demands that our body puts on us and that our activities put on us? Is there's high impact stuff, right? So running, jumping, hopping, picking up kids, your kids running into you and you having to catch them, and all of a sudden you feel like, oh my gosh, I just peed. There's higher intra-abdominal pressure, large coughs, big sneezes, more intra-abdominal pressure from carrying something heavier, and the endurance and the amount of repetitions that you're doing. So you have to ask yourself, is it the exercise? So let's take, for example, is it running that's making you pee? I mean, what are you guys dealing with, like leakage wise? Anybody dealing with leakage, or we're all just here for a friend, right? So
Mine's mainly from like coughing or
from coughing, right? So if it's a chronic cough of some kind because allergies or a cold, then that demand is going to be greater, and it's going to be this endurance episode that happens for the pelvic floor. Same thing with, let's just say, picking up kids or laundry baskets or a bag of mulch in the yard. So when you pick that up and you get leakage, you have to ask yourself, is the demand for your activity greater than the activity of your pelvic floor and core? Do they outweigh each other? One, we pretty much want our pelvic floor and core, like we were talking last week, to always meet us right where we are. We did that little feeling our tension with our closed nose breathing. We were feeling that intra-abdominal pressure. That intra-abdominal pressure should meet the demand of what we're doing. So you could do, and I've had a lot of women come into my office and have these phenomenal pelvic floor muscles that can contract and pull all the way up to the back of their throat. But the thing is, their coordination and their control of the finesse of how much they really need, how much work they need, is off. And that's what causes a lot of leakage at most times. And that's why I said it's not always about Kegels. And I find that there's a lot of women who do Kegels like all the time, but they're still having leakage. So one, they could maybe not be doing them right, because we know 40% of women aren't doing them right. But at the same time, it could just be a control issue. So it would be like saying, I'm going to pick up my coffee cup here, right? And if I were to pick up my coffee cup and think that it was heavier, what would happen? I'd go it would like go throwing up to the ceiling. Or if I were to not pick it up with enough force, I might drop it out of my hand. So it's the same thing that needs to occur for the pelvic floor.